What's up, Brandon?
What's up, Micah? How you doing?
I am doing well. I hope you are doing well as well.
I'm always doing well.
Why is that?
That's because life is a gift, you know? Without if you're not doing well, then there's no point in living. So if you're living, you're doing well.
That's true. Do you think that if you're living, like, what about people who are like being tortured and stuff and like prisoners of war? They're living, but are they truly alive?
Well, you gotta look at the bright side. At least you're able to breathe, you know? Some people, they don't get to experience the hardship that you're experiencing, and they'll never be as good as they can be because they're not experiencing that hardship. So you're getting tortured, you're a prisoner of war. I hope one day that you come out of that, safe and healthy. But try to, if you have hope, it's easier to survive things. So
That's
even
true.
if it's false hope, you'd rather have some hope than not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer that depression is the worst disease that somebody can get, like true, like major depressive disorder, because with other diseases, with other problems, you can always find a silver lining, but depression biochemically makes that almost impossible. So I really think that like even though it's not like, physically painful generally, I don't know, what do you think?
Depression. So my take on that is I think most people who think they have depression actually don't. Of course, depression is 100% real. It's a real disease, but a lot of people think they have depression. They're kind of like, it's kind of like a negative feedback loop in a sense, or maybe positive. One of the feedback loop where you're saying I have depression and you're thinking in that kind of way. So that makes you more sad. And then you're like, oh, I really have depression. And then keep like making yourself more and more and more sad. So I think like to an extent, depression is sort of like a mindset. So if I suspect that I'm a little depressed, I think like, all right, I'm depressed, but there's some things that I should be grateful for, some things that should be happy about. I have something to look forward. Try to create ways to look forward to certain things. Try to create ways to like think of like the good things you had. Don't think of the bad things. I think a lot of it is like a mindset to an extent. And if you can convince yourself out of that mindset, it's a lot easier to pretty much get out of that state. But of course, like, some of it is 100% real, right? Everyone has sad thoughts, but doesn't mean everyone has to be stuck in those sad thoughts forever.
Because as someone, it's kind of like, what's the disease? I forget. There's this name of this disease that they basically say some people have, and they use it as like when they don't know what you have. Like they'll diagnose you with this, and it's like if you get diagnosed with that, then like you don't like you basically have to not believe that you got diagnosed with that, because if you did, like it means there's no real treatment, right? So I think it's similar with depression, right? If you get diagnosed with depression, you sort of have to delude yourself into, obviously this isn't in every case, but like in case that you don't have depression, it may be wise to assume that you don't for a little bit so that you could see if you could figure out if it's something else. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
100% agree. To an extent, ignorance is bliss. Like, I rather not I rather a person that's in I rather not that a person is like in a position of authority, like a doctor, tell me I have something. I rather like try to figure it out myself first to see
Yeah.
like to what extent is this like actually real. Because
Yeah.
some doctors do have a profit incentive to prescribe you certain conditions.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about, like with capitalism and everything, right? Capitalism in some ways is great. It amplifies innovation, right? But at the same time, it only amplifies innovation if that there's a profit incentive for that innovation. So for example, right, insulin is very profitable because you have to keep taking it. Same thing with antidepressants. So insurance companies will focus on research and development for antidepressants and insulin and stuff like that, just with minimal changes to broadening patterns. And I feel that in a lot of ways, like we could have developed not further, but we could have branched differently in a way that may be more beneficial. Like maybe we'd have a cure for diabetes if we did more research and development into that. The thing is, a cure for diabetes, like a one-time shot, wouldn't be as profitable.
I understand what you're saying, like treat the symptom rather than the disease because the symptom is more profitable. I understand. But the thing about that is like just to think about like what system do you truly want to live in, right? You can't go fully capitalist, you can't go fully socialist. We know both of them, both absolute obviously don't work. So we have to find like good balance. But it's a lot of gray area where you
Yeah,
don't want to like
as true with
fall into
as
the
true with most things in life. Yeah.
yeah. To not neither one is objectively correct, but in some situations, one of them is more correct, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
maybe correct isn't the best word. It maximizes, like, is the best for humans, I guess.
Yeah.
but with certain objectives in mind, right?
Yeah.
It just depends on what you care about more, you know? If you really believe that for what is most beneficial for society isn't necessarily innovation, but just people being able to survive, then yeah, under that framework, socialism may be a better system. But it all depends on your framework, and we could argue then about like what are your axioms, what are you arguing based on? Maybe we have different premises we're working with.
I
And
know what
I
you're talking. Yeah, it's like
and I think when we
go ahead, go ahead.
knew.
Alright, it's like objective truth, like, so, if you remember Mr. Coggin was talking about this, right? We have a very disconnected national identity because we stopped, uh, be coexisting under some objective truth.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't like, most places in America, you can't go, like, to the northwest and then go to the southeast, and they'll have the same objective truth as they live by. Before, back in the day, right, we all had the same objective truth to live by. We live by we're Christian and we care about our liberty, and that's the two things we'll live by, and we're all connected by that. But now it's kind of like disconnected, right? We, we don't have that much of a national identity. We all generally believe in freedom, right?
Yeah.
But like, to what extent is that really united? Because freedom, some people believe in freedom to a certain extent, and some people believe in absolute freedom. So we really don't have like a national identity, and like that goes back. Like we need some sort of objective truth. Otherwise, we're all arguing from subjectivity, and there's no like result.
So I see what you're saying. At the same time, that there are pros and cons for everyone having like a unified framework. There's also pros and cons for not having a unified framework. And that is there's a reason why, like, for example, there is no with philosophy, for example, there isn't one, in my opinion, best way to live one's life, right? I think for a lot of people, it's religion, right? A lot of people can find great meaning in religion, whatever religion that may be. But at the same time, a lot of people simply don't believe in God and don't want to. Or maybe they don't want to, but they can't bring themselves to. Like I've had this issue and I'm not sure what I necessarily believe, but it feels to me that it doesn't make sense for God to exist, in my opinion. And we can have that conversation. But what I do want to say, what I do want to focus on a little bit is what makes a life like meaningful. And in ancient Greece, they said like the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think in some ways, not having a unified framework gives people more room for figuring out what framework works best for them and the way they're living. In certain cultures, we care about certain things more for good reasons. So,
I mean, I understand what you're saying. What truly gives life meaning? Overall, I think what truly gives life meaning is like, let's go back to what humans naturally have been doing for the last however many years have existed. It's like reproduction, right? We want to create more of us. So I think it kind of is the purpose of life to almost everyone, right? Obviously, if you can't physically do that, then you can't physically do that. But that's our natural instinct to just create more of us. So I think that's one part of our life meaning. Like we need to have children.
yeah, and some
Without having
people
children, our people die out or our species dies out. And no animal wants their species to die out. It's that
yeah.
simple.
And some people find great meaning. I mean, basically, most people I think who have kids find great meaning in having kids. But some people maybe they feel that they're not the type of person who could raise a kid, whether that be because they're physically incapable or because they're mentally unstable or whatever. And I think for those people, often people dedicate their whole lives to certain things. They dedicate their life to art. They dedicate their life to music. They dedicate their life to like math, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with because, I mean, God, by definition, is the highest thing in the universe, the thing that is greater than all other things. And in general, my understanding of the Christian belief is that there is a being that is God. God is an omnipotent, all loving, all knowing being.
Correct. A personable being. Yeah.
But at the same time, somebody that might not be everybody's God, right? Some people may not worship that God. For example, some people might feel that their God is art or their God is music. That is the thing to them that they put in their life most highly. And it works. I mean, they could find great meaning, but at the same time, you create a certain narrative of your life. And like, let's say you're into music. What if you go deaf? Right? Like we don't know what will happen to us, right? So, it isn't necessarily it works for some people, right? But I see the appeal of regardless of whether or not he exists, having an omnipotent God, because that kind of works for everybody. It's all encompassing, you know?
I see what you're saying, 100%. But the thing is, just because, all right, I like to say this a lot, and a lot of people don't understand what I actually mean. I say that, like, the thing is, you could say that I believe in this, and you could be just wrong. Like, issue with truth is that it is objective. By definition, truth is objective. So if you have a subjective opinion of truth, you have a possibility of being wrong. Now it comes down to, let's find the objective truth. That's what it really comes down to. It doesn't come down to the fact that objective truth doesn't exist. It comes down to the fact that to find what the objective truth is. And there's a lot of interpretations, right? I mean, you have many great philosophers who think that objective truth is this or objective truth is that, right? But my personal belief is that it comes down to God, right? It comes down to a being that is omnipotent, right? Like what you said, is personable, right? Cares about his creation and that is all loving and is fair. So a lot of people, they tend to stray away from God. And I think that at the end of the day, before they die, I think everyone has this thought. Have I done everything wrong? Was I wrong about God? Was I wrong about the afterlife? Because you never truly know what you're gonna think when you're right before you die. And right before you die is the time where I feel like most people have an epiphany and they're like, let's say that's it. I'm about to die. I was an atheist my whole life. I lived in sin. But on my deathbed, I'm like, shit, I messed up. I messed up. And let me just say a prayer and just see what happens. And then let's say they're completely correct. They go into the afterlife and they see God and they're like, holy shit, thank God that I said that final prayer and it got me out of eternal damnation. So I think that people don't truly understand what they believe until they're faced with like a force that makes them like, I have to believe this. I have to, right?
Yeah, and I mean, most people, I think a lot of people aren't really forced to face these questions, either because they don't, mostly because they don't think about it, but also because they have no reason to think about it. Like, it's kind of like, unless your life is going bad, you aren't really forced to. If my life is going good, right? Everything's great. I have a great social life. My mental health is great. My physical health is great. I'm going to the gym. I have a good romantic life. Everything. I have no reason to really, wrestle with these philosophical questions. Now, me personally, I like to wrestle with philosophical questions, so maybe I will. But for the average, like Joe, they're not really thinking about it until something bad happens. And like you said, like death is like for a lot of people, most people I think aren't really don't want that. Like, of
It's
course,
the
they
end
know
all
it's
be
gonna
all.
happen. Yeah,
It's
that
the end
is
all be
the
all.
yeah, it's yeah, exactly. You put it perfectly. It is the end all be all.
Like I might as well just say like I might as well. What I have nothing to lose. At this point, I only have things to gain, so I might as well just, you know what? I might have fucked up, and I think the most brave and courageous thing you can do is to admit that you're wrong. No one wants to admit that they're wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's true in all facets of life. Like, it's not once you make a mistake, it's like you can't really do much after that. I think a lot of times, especially nowadays, we hold people to very high standard that like if everything I ever said was available online, holy shit, I'd be canceled. Like, because I say a lot of I per
Everyone would be canceled.
yeah,
Everyone would be canceled.
well, but
Anyone who
that
thinks anyone who puts themselves on a moral high ground and cancels someone else, you know damn well they have some deep dark secrets in their
yeah,
closet.
it's like he who does not sin cast the first stone kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, I really think me especially because I don't really have a great filter. Like I just think that people make mistakes. It's just a part of being human. You know why especially with people on the left, and I'm I'm a leftist myself. I think that we're so hypocritical because you know we don't believe in, like, say, the death penalty, but if someone says, like, you know something racist, and then they realize, like, "Oh, wait, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Like, that's not true." And they go out and they apologize. They're like, "Nope, you're a racist." Like, what? And it's so contradictory too
It's
because
equivalent to a death sentence, right?
yeah,
My entire life is over pretty much at that point if
yeah,
I just get accused of racism or if I was a racist.
yeah. It's very sad. The worst part is it doesn't even help their case because it just alienates people. And I think this is especially true in academia. There's a problem in science where scientists aren't very good at communicating their results, which is, I think, part of the reason why the NIH is being defunded. A lot of science, I think, For example, you know Ozempic? You know how that was discovered? So they were doing research on this desert lizard, just for funsies, and they were curious, like, of how is this desert lizard able to sustain itself in a desert? Like, how is it able to do all this metabolic activity when there's not a lot of food? And they basically found GLP-1, which is like, I'm pretty sure the active ingredient in Ozempic. Ozempic wasn't discovered like by people trying to discover Ozempic. Ozempic was discovered by people who are curious about lizards. That's how a lot of the great like scientific discoveries are found by
Yeah,
studying nature. Nature is very efficient. So and in a lot of ways, like the things that are alive are good at surviving by definition. So
absolutely.
I think that, even when something doesn't seem like, necessary for scientific progress, a lot of times it ends up being that way. I don't know if you see, like on Fox News, they always talk about like the shrimp on the treadmill. Have you seen that talking point?
I have not, no.
There are these researchers who put a shrimp on a treadmill and apparently they spent like $1 million on the treadmill, which isn't true, by the way. The research came out and said the treadmill cost him $40 out of his own pocket. So, like, and they were putting the shrimp on a treadmill, and people were like, "Why are you putting a shrimp on a treadmill? Like, who cares?" But the reason they were doing it is they were wanted to see if shifts in climate are affecting like shrimp like the ability, I think, for them to run or something, or like movement. So like I don't know. I just think it's silly that we're defunding the NIH. You know,
I could agree to an extent. Actually, I want to touch on that nature point first. I recently have been doing like tons of research into health because like it's kind of like my thing. Like I love like health and stuff. Like of course I'm not perfect. I still have many mistakes and many things I do wrong. Like I've generally kind of changed my life. When I was 14, I was in the hospital for 4 days for something with my
I'm
stomach.
sorry.
They yet to know what went wrong, and that they generally have no idea. Like it's a mystery. And I took it upon myself as a independent, stubborn person to figure it out myself. I was like, you know what? These guys don't really give a shit. They don't really care at the end of the day. So I'm gonna figure this shit out myself. So I did a tons of research and I realized that for thousands and thousands of years, humans have been eating and existing in a certain way, and uh their health. Of course, some humans would die early because there's no surgery for a broken arm. It's very difficult to heal from like a physical injury. Humans who are able to surpass like in infantry, right? When they're an infant, after that, they lived longer than we live now, which is shocking. You always hear, oh, they all died at 30. That's not true. The infant fatality rate was really high because it's hard to care for a baby in nature, right? A chaotic nature. But after they reach like adulthood or teenagers, they're able to live up to 80, 90, 100 years old. So, it's important to understand why, right? So, anthropology actually really interests me because you go back, you look at different peoples, and you understand that they were living a certain way and they're able to survive very long. And a commonality between all of those people is three things. One, what they're eating, right? They're eating mostly carnivore. And the only time where they would be eating fruits or vegetables is in times of starvation. They wouldn't be touching fruits or vegetables because, first of all, they're not as nutritious and they do not satiate you as much as saturated fat. That's
Well,
just objectively.
don't like what about like the whole thing with like the like agriculture? Like didn't for after the agricultural revolution, I mean, we were mostly, eating fruits, grains, vegetables, and
That's
humans are
where our
omnivores.
That's where our health went downhill, my friend. But I'm not saying you should never eat fruits or vegetables. I'm saying you should look up what does a carrot look like before humans genetically modified it into make it edible. It's literally this like brown twig with a bunch of roots around it. It's not edible. The things we eat today are completely not found in nature, and that goes against our nature, our natural instinct, our natural evolution. That goes against who we were when we were like our ancestors. And I think that plays into our thousands of years of biology of evolution and goes against it. When you go against your biology, more often than not, you're going to become unhealthy. You're going to become sick. I'm not saying you should be fully carnivore, but I'm saying you should look how the people live. Right? They got more sun exposure. They didn't sit inside all day. Drank unpasteurized milk. They would eat organs, and they were the healthiest people in the world. I mean, look at the Inuit people in Alaska. They still, to this day, they drink raw blood, they eat raw meat, and they're one of the healthiest, longest living people in the world. Right? You can look at the Maasai tribe, the Hadza tribe in Africa. I think the Maasai only drink milk, and they grow up to 7 feet and 8 feet tall, and that's the
Well,
average height.
I don't necessarily like, I haven't researched this, so I don't know, like, if what you're saying is necessarily true, but I would suspect that those people have developed genetic or since infancy, like, resistance to bacteria in raw meat and unpasteurized milk. So, I don't
Well, we
necessarily know if we should be, like, telling people, like, "Oh, it's safe to drink unpasteurized milk," especially as adults, just because, like, we haven't,
we don't lose our gut bacteria like that. I mean, we only recently started eating in this fashion. I'm not saying you should just fully eat raw
well,
meat.
I
And
agree, I agree. Like, the light and I keep in mind, I I am a believer that, just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good, right? So, like, I think that, like, poison mushrooms, for example, are natural, doesn't necessarily mean they're good. A lot of things that we used to do,
well, not natural in that sense,
mhm. I
right?
guess a lot of the things that
Obviously,
Mhm,
if trees and flowers are natural, doesn't mean we should be eating trees and flowers.
sure.
I mean, natural in the sense of what we ate originally. Nature naturally synonymous to originally in the context that I'm saying it. And in regards to what you were saying about like we're not like we you shouldn't be eating the meat we eat now. And I'm a conservative, so my people they don't really like to think about the climate, but I totally disagree. I think climate and agriculture are the most important things to our lifespan, right? So I think we should be having better practices in farming and agriculture. We should be raising our cows regeneratively, where they're not damaging the land. We should be having them grass fed, right? Not feeding them processed grains and processed soy. We should be having our chickens the same way pasture raised, right? They have open space, able to reproduce. They're not forced to get, you know, like animals are raped sometimes. They shouldn't be raped. Like animals shouldn't be treated that way. And
Yeah,
you know this.
I think in a lot of, like, factory settings, it's interesting, in the UK, I don't know what the department is, but, like, the department that, like, oversees, like, animals and agriculture and whatnot,
It's the equivalent of the DOA here, pretty much.
yeah, so whatever the DOA is in the UK, this is called the DOA. They have, like, a list of acceptable ways of killing a pig, and one of those ways is smashing its skull into the ground over
It's
and
not
over
natural.
until it dies. Same DOA, so there was this content creator that, like, recorded a video of it, like, as, like a meme, like, kicking its cat, and the cat, like, went flying, and everyone was like, "Dude, what the fuck? You can't do that." And the DOA took away his cat, which I think is reasonable. I think that's reasonable. But I think it's also hypocritical if you think that smashing a pig's skull into the ground is an acceptable way to kill it, and you're taking away someone's cat just for, like, kicking it. Like, I just think that's very, very hypocritical.
1,000,000%, my friend. I completely agree with that, right? And what I was going to say was that when things are raised properly, right, you only get parasites in sick animals and sick people. You only see a parasite in a sick person, right? The person has to be already sick. Their immune system has to be already compromised. And if you're eating, like we eat raw meat sometimes, right? If you go to a high-end restaurant, you're going to be eating some steak tartare.
Well, that's
Are
also
you
because
pissing your pants?
that those are, like, high quality cows, and they know that those
Exactly.
cows aren't sick. Like, Wagyu
Exactly.
cows, they're being fed Wagyu steak.
They're
Like,
being fed olives, they're being fed grass. Exactly. So I think that we should, as a whole, get away from the mass produced, right? Not the grain fed stuff. The factories of course, it's more expensive. Of course, it's harder. But as much as you can, try to go to your local farmer, right? Try to pick up some unpasteurized milk from your local farmer. Look through the farm yourself and be the judge of whether or not you think these animals are raised properly. And I think that's the proper way to maximize your health and truly maximize your lifespan.
yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. There's this creator, I don't know if Jesse Wells.
Not aware, no.
I'm sure you disagree with him on basically everything, except that he has this one song. He's, like, a very, like left wing. You maybe agree with him on, like, a couple things, actually. But one of the things I think you'll agree with him, he has this song called Fat, and the lyrics are like, "It's your own damn fault that you're so damn fat." But he's being, like, satirical, right?
I
He's being
like that.
satirical, and he's basically, like, saying, like, like, they make all this processed food. This food is designed to make you addicted to it, basically. It's so processed, and
It's
yet people
genetically
say
modified.
it's genetically modified. I mean, genetically modified, in my opinion, isn't always bad. Like, in a lot of like, strawberries now are safe to eat because they're genetically modified.
Right, but
Obviously,
doesn't that tell you something about us eating it, right? If we have to
yeah.
genetically modify a food to eat it, should we really be eating it?
Well, I mean, I don't see any problem with it. Like, now it's safe to eat and now it's good for our diet. So, I don't see the issue necessarily.
There's
Like, even though it's not natural per se, still good for us at this point, right? Even if you give it to someone, 2,000 years ago, I'm sure it would be good for them too.
It's good to an extent, right? But you shouldn't make your whole diet reliant
Of course, everything
on
in moderation, everything in
yeah.
moderation, just
Like
like most things in
the
life.
worst things I see is veganism and fruitarians or something, fruitarians or something. So I think that's what it's called, where they either only eat fruits or only eat plants. That's
Well,
just
I understand,
beyond
like,
detrimental to your health.
well, you could definitely be healthy and be vegan. You could eat tofu. You think like cows have protein in them and cows eat grass. So the cows must be getting the protein from somewhere, right? You could want
But we're
you
not cows. That's the issue here. We're not cows. We're human, right? And humans never in history have been on their hands and knees eating grass.
Well, I'm
Like,
not saying we should eat grass literally, but I'm saying you could get protein from agriculture. And
right.
at this point in history, it's difficult. It's
And
much
the
easier to get, like what you're saying, like get protein and get your healthy from meat. But I think that, if you can afford it, and you want to do it, it's your choice. Go vegan and you could totally be healthy and do it at
yeah,
the same time.
I
It's just
totally agree. You can
difficult.
do it. You can do whatever you want, right? I'm not forcing you to eat a certain way. But I want to say two things about veganism. The first thing being is a lot of plant protein. It's not bioavailable, meaning your body doesn't absorb it to the same extent
Yeah.
that you absorb meat protein for many reasons. But the thing is, you would have to eat so many plants in order to get the same protein you get from meat. But what else comes with plants is not only is it just like a plant, right? It comes with anti-nutrients. Many plants have something called plant defense chemicals, right? Because in nature, they're still a species. They don't want to be eaten. So they purposely create poisons and toxins in their system so they're not eaten, right? I want my species to survive. What am I going to defend myself with? I can't run away. I can't like hide. I have to create toxins and poisons in order to defend myself. So a lot of plants, a lot of vegetables, they do have plant defense chemicals. And one more thing about veganism is in order to cultivate certain plants like avocados and soy itself, you have to kill everything around it in order for it to grow. For example, let's look at avocados. Every single like small animal, like a rodent, like a squirrel, like birds, they love to eat the plants. They love to eat these little like,
Yeah.
vegetables and fruits. So in order for them to survive and be edible, you gotta spray so many pesticides to kill everything around it. So you may think you're saving a couple of cows' lives, which in reality you're probably not. But you're also killing everything around those vegetables. And then not only that, in order to get your vegetables, if you live in New York, there's like nothing that can grow here. You're flying it in from South America. It's going on an airplane, which releases more carbon emission than any gas powered car or any methane from cow farts. Like it's substantially worse. You're kind of like you're looking at it at the surface as a vegan. I feel like you're looking at the surface, but you're not looking too deep into what you're actually doing. Like on the surface, it sounds great, but if you look deep into it, there's a
And I
lot
mean,
more
at the
to it.
same time, some people, like, I think just don't feel right eating animals. And that's okay. That's your choice. Like, I think that in a lot of ways, part of it is the social effect. Like, somebody's vegan and then, they go to a barbecue and there's nothing for them to eat. So then the host says, okay, next time I'll buy vegan. I'll buy like something vegan for you. And then, more people become vegan. And I mean, would have to look more into it because honestly, I don't know much about veganism to,
Dude, yeah, it's a
yeah,
it's a it's a good rabbit hole. I
yeah, I'm
like it.
sure it is. This is really interesting. I never really even thought about veganism to this extent, but I do greatly understand people who are vegan. I also understand people who are not vegan. I think that, if your principle is climate, I don't know much about that. I don't know if, I mean, I do know that hamburgers, like the people talk about like how ChatGPT is so bad for the environment, and then like they eat McDonald's. So it's like, McDonald's, I think the amount of carbon emissions created from one McDonald's hamburger is a lot compared to 100 ChatGPT queries. I remember looking into it. It's like significantly more than like 100
Yeah,
ChatGPT queries. So, I also get like, for example, when I first learned, I remember that the red stuff in steak was blood. I was so like taken aback. And I was vegan for a little bit. I was actually vegan for 6 months. But
and
like
you
you
hated
said,
your life. I know you hated your
no,
life.
I mean, I think it was mixed, right? Like, or not 6 months. I was vegan for like a couple months, like over one
The
summer.
the real effects they come over a longer period of time, but you definitely felt
Yeah,
Definitely did not feel
I mean,
as good as you could have been.
I don't I agree. I think that's mostly why I stopped. Like, I was feeling very fatigued, so I basically needed to eat
Correct.
meat again for health reasons.
Yeah.
But I do sympathize with people, who are vegan. If you are able to do that, then, good for you, man.
I
Like,
think it's ignorance if you're a vegan. I think it's truly ignorance. You don't know the true facts. You don't know the evidence behind it. You pretty much hear something, you're like, oh, this sounds so, nice and dandy. Like, this is a good idea. But if you look, you never looked into it. You don't understand, like, the depths it is. How do I get those plants? Where do they come from? What is the truth behind emissions from cows? In reality, cows make up less than 0.0000001% of emissions. The true emissions, which I agree with them, true emissions come from the factories. Factory farming is by far the worst thing ever. Horrible for your health, horrible for the environment, all around, it's bad. But, true ethics, you raise the animal right, you let it live most of its life, and when it's ready to die, you take it and you eat it. That's it. Vegans don't understand that because they see, oh, I kill animal. I animal, you animal, we all animal. If I kill my people, that's bad. But that's
well,
not
I
the
think
truth.
I think you may be underestimating the complexity of their argument. Like, I agree. I think that the issue with finding the objective truth is that I agree there is an objective truth if your question is well defined. If the question is it okay to eat meat? There isn't an objective answer because it depends on what you value. It depends on what you value more. Like, it could be it is bad in some ways to eat meat, and if what you're saying is true, it's bad in some ways to be vegan. So it really comes down to what do you value more? And
Well, that's interesting because what you just said is inherently subjective.
yeah, I agree. It is subjective, and I think the reason is, the question isn't not well defined. Because, if you say, given this framework, given, let's say, utilitarianism, given, let's say, these premises, what is the uh, best, like, is it okay to eat meat? Then maybe you can get to a conclusion. Sometimes you can't, because sometimes you can have, like, a set of premises leading to two separate conclusions that are distinct from each other. In the episode with Ben Davidson, it was really interesting. He said, in there's this book from Mills, who's like utilitarianism.
Can you explain that to me? I kind of have a soft understanding of it.
There's different flavors of it. Most generally, it's we should there's modifications of it, but in general, it's the moral thing is what minimizes harm.
Okay, okay,
So
okay.
so like, and there are issues with that. So and there are different flavors of it, whatever. I think that's technically preferential utilitarianism or something like that. Someone could correct me if they're watching this.
Isn't that inherently a conservative idea?
I don't think it's conservative or liberal. I mean, people use it to justify things. Like, there's this guy Peterson who wrote this really interesting essay that shows that um a very interesting argument. If we start from the premises that, like, we should do what minimizes harm, and we should do if there is um something bad happening, and it is in our power to stop it without sacrificing something of comparable moral significance, if that makes sense,
Yeah, yeah.
that then we should stop it.
Interesting. Okay.
So from those two premises, you can derive that giving to charity is not something supererogatory. If it's nice to do, like giving to charity, we usually think of supererogatory. You don't have to do it, but it's a nice thing to do. Obligatory would be you must do it. Like, you must not murder people. That is, like,
Obviously.
but in utilitarianism, technically, giving to charity is not supererogatory. It's obligatory. It's obligatory, whatever, how you pronounce that word. Like, and 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 he makes this really, really good argument for it that to this day, the only, like, satisfying counter argument to it, he develops it much better than I just did. The only satisfying counter argument I've seen, his argument specifically, is that you should give to charity to the extent to which, like, you are, like, living in the bare minimum to be able to do
Eh,
like, live your life, right? And do the
That
thing you
is
need to
the
do, especially if
that
you have
is
dependents.
Yeah, that is a general, I would say that's a general Christian belief. Like God says that we give, but we can only give so much, right? We should obviously always give. I completely agree. You should give to charity, right? Whenever I see an opportunity to give to a charity that I know is going to the right place, I'll give it to them. I don't mind that. But at the same time, I'm not going to give to charity when I have 2 cents in my pocket.
Mhm.
I'm just not.
For
It's
sure.
just not something I'm going to do.
And also, like, he makes a part of the argument is, okay, like let's say a kid is drowning in a pond, right? You you see a child drowning in a pond, okay? And you could rescue him and save him. It's a very shallow pond, by the way. But you're wearing $200 sneakers.
Yeah, correct. But now you can't compare a life to sneakers. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you go and save him, right? You're in your 200
Obviously.
sneakers. There's no time to untie them. You go and save them. Okay? Okay. Now let's say the kid's on the opposite side of the world. You see him on a screen, and you could press a lever. You pull the lever, and it will take him out of the water. A platform will rise that'll take him out of the water, and the kid's safe. Do you press the lever?
Save the kid?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay. What if it costs $200 to press the lever?
Yeah. A
Okay.
human life is invaluable. I'll give any last penny to save a human life.
Now, if you go to, I think the website's like called Save a Life. Here, let me see what the website's called. It is thelifeyoucansave.org. You can donate money to charities, and it will tell you exactly how many lives you'll save based off your donation, right? So some of the charities include malaria nets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so,
well, hold on. They're not giving value to human life. They're giving value to treatment.
Well,
in a sense,
it goes directly to people. Here, I'll give you. Let me see. What exactly you are. You are. So, for example, again, like malaria, food, right? Food for starving kids, right?
But you're not giving value. You're not saying that this human is cost $100. You're saying the treatment to save this human costs $100.
Well, okay.
Right?
Let's say I donate $50 to the Against Malaria Foundation, right? That purchases 25 bed nets to protect those living in malaria-stricken areas from infected mosquitoes. So the cost to save one life, right? Because it is true that it is probable that those kids will die. Just like you could argue that, for example, with the kid in the drowning pond, maybe somebody else will just pick him up, right? Someone else will pick him up. And there will be kids who die if somebody doesn't donate. But you can't say in the drowning pond scenario that like somebody else is going to save him. I don't really need to pull the lever and spend my $200.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
But that's
Okay.
just one framework, right? Like, it's not, I wouldn't call that an objective truth. I would just say, if you believe this, and there are problems with utilitarianism, for example, if you're trying to minimize pain or if you're trying to maximize pleasure, then let's say a serial killer gains an immense amount of pleasure from killing people, or more pleasure, you could say, than that person dying. Let's say that person is suicidal. Someone gets pleasure from killing suicidal people, right, who have no friends and no family. You could argue based on utilitarianism that murder is justified in killing that person. So, like, it depending on the flavor.
I don't know. That's a stretch.
No, I mean, it follows
because what you said was we have to sacrifice something of equal moral value, and my pleasure is not an equal moral value of a human life.
Well, depending on the branch of utilitarianism. But yeah, in that branch that I just said, I think it's preferential utilitarianism. I don't think it's justified. But you could get all sorts of wacky conclusions, such as the charity one, that you have to put yourself in the same conditions as them. Like, you have to donate until you're in, like, comparable conditions, basically. And that's obligatory.
That's a little crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, but it follows. It's just against our intuitions.
Not everything logical is true. So I
agree. I agree. Logic isn't everything. Logic, people, because if we made all our choices completely logically, we would never like swim in the ocean.
Correct.
Right? We would never drink champagne because alcohol is poisonous. The ocean is scary. It's big. You can get swept away by a wave.
And the thing with logic is you can use logic to bring yourself to literally any conclusion that you want to convince yourself of doing.
Yeah, it just depends. You just choose the right premises. Exactly.
I can convince myself to go out and buy cocaine through logic. But I can also convince myself to go to the gym through logic. I can use the same logic to convince myself to go buy cocaine, right? I can say, I'm gonna go buy cocaine. It's gonna be a little bit of a hard journey, but I'm gonna get great output. I'm gonna be happy for at least 2 hours. Or I can go, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna have a great workout and be happy for the next 2 hours. It's the same logic, but then I'm getting cocaine and I'm going to the gym.
And I think that's part of what we were talking about before, is that the world is so complicated that you can only, like, let's say like Israel-Palestine as an example, right? For me,
it's a great meeting at GAC.
I wish I came, bro. I wish I came.
Dude, it was a great meeting.
Dude, I'm so upset. I really wanted to see that argument. All right, anyways.
It's great.
Yeah.
Alex can tell we're on the same side. I don't think you'll ever see that.
You're both pro-Israel or what?
No.
Just for the Just for the audience, can you explain what happened?
Okay, so I'm the president of the Global Awareness Club. Basically, we just talk about politics. And one of the topics that I picked for the meeting was the Israel-Palestine ceasefire. And one of the kids in the club was arguing that, well, I don't know if he was really arguing anything. I think he was just saying things. He was saying that I don't care what Israel did. They're always right. They've always been right. And October 7th is able to be used to justify any action that Israel does. And I asked him, to what extent can Israel do what they want to do in order to compensate for October 7th? He said they can do whatever they want. They can kill whoever they want. So I asked him, do you think there's a genocide in Gaza? He's like, no. And I'm like, explain what a genocide is. He gives some BS explanation of saying, like, I mean, technically the explanation is correct. He was saying, like, oh, it's a killing of a group of people because of who they are. And I'm like, all right, that makes sense. And I asked him, like, what do you think of the Palestinians? He's like, well, they're all evil. Every single one, even the children, even the people who are not the terrorists. He said every single one. And I'm like, then therefore is that a genocide if they're systematically killing all the terrorists, but then everyone is a terrorist. So is that considered genocide? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. I'm like, do you think Israel's ever broken any laws? All right, have there anything illegal ever? He's like, no. So I gave him two examples. I gave him Israeli settlers in the West Bank violating international law, which is just objective. So I told Alex, I'm like, Alex, let's go type this up right now in Google. Does Israeli settlers settling in the West Bank violate international law? It says yes. And he's like, well, that's just not true. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
this is I feel how I this is how I often feel. I mean, I'm not so educated on this to be honest. I talked to my dad about this, and I don't know what you think. Is it true? Like my dad always says, that like within hospitals, and that's why Israel bombs the hospitals, which I think is frankly a stupid argument because. Not stupid. It's. I mean, it is stupid, but I think it's a silly argument to defend that because, like, you don't have to bomb the hospital, right? Even if it is true that Hamas is hiding in the hospital, it's not like we only have one type of warfare. We could send soldiers in there and instruct them do not kill any civilians.
It's very easy. We have three things we can do. First of all, we have special ops who purposely, well, in America, they purposely go into high stakes situations where terrorists are hiding in civilian homes and they purposefully go there because they're highly trained and they purposely are told not to kill civilians. Not to kill civilians. So when you kill a civilian, that's just a bad look on you.
Hmm.
And you want the world's support when you're fighting a war, right? You want everyone to support you, and so it helps you win. So when you do something like kill a civilian, right, purposeful, whether or not it's purposeful, it still gives a bad look on you. Number two, we've seen Israel where they're able to wipe out entire governments with pagers. They wiped out the entire level
All right, what
with
entire
those
governments
with
with what?
the pagers. Remember the pager story? They literally wiped out either Lebanon or Yemen, or one of the Arab countries, the Houthis. They wiped out the leader of the Houthis with an explosive pager. They had a whole system where they convinced the Houthis to buy pagers from this fake company where they
What
wired
are
up the bombs.
pagers?
So like like it's kind of like a phone, but a pager is I don't know, but it's like a private cell phone between a small group of people where you're only able to send a message to a specific number. So let's say my number is 15, right? I could ring you my pager, put 15. It's not really like a message, but it tells you like that means I gotta go do something. Like so like let's say me and you have a pager, right? And I'm the leader of an organization. And I paged you, right? I dial your number 15 on my pager, that just sets an alert off to you. And what they would decide is, what do I do when I get paged, right? Let's say in our organization, when you get paged, you have to go pick up the phone and call a certain number. That's what a pager is. So you can't really track a pager. You can't really infiltrate a pager. A cell phone, you could you could infiltrate, right? You could hack into, you could kind of like gather data, but a pager is not. It's literally just a one simple machine, right? You press a button, you get an alert, and that's it. There's no screen, there's nothing. So that's what a pager is. And terrorists often use that because it's kind of hard to infiltrate that. So they're able to send messages a lot more secretively. So what Israel did, which was extremely smart, is that they created a fake company. This was like over the course of 2 years of like a progress in order to convince terrorists to buy their pagers specifically. And they had every single one of them wired with a bomb. And they collectively blew them all up and like that. And they had barely any casualties outside of the person that they're trying to kill, which is the proper and just way to fight a war. And we know that Israel's able to do that. We know that their intelligence is the greatest in the world. We know that they're able to do that. Their intelligence is objectively the best in the world. They're able to gather intelligence from any country in any way to through certain unethical ways, but still, objectively intelligence wise, they're able to do things like that. So yes, they're gonna bomb hospitals because terrorists are in there. But is that the best way to do it? I don't think so. I think that they know that a lot of the world already hates Jews. Why would you even make a worse look, being like, oh, they're killing civilians, they don't give a shit about anyone. That's what the Jews have always been doing, right? So like, not only are they giving a bad look to the Jews, they're just in general being unethical when they know that they can be ethical. In some situations, it's hard to be perfectly ethical, but they know they can. They have the technology, they have the means, so why don't they? And that's the issue. That's what the whole thing stems down to, whether or not you're pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, or just neither.
Would you consider yourself pro-Palestine?
No, absolutely not. I would consider myself pro-human, right? I don't support the terrorist state of Palestine at all, and I don't support what Israel does to the Palestinians. I care about people dying. I don't want people to die.
Yeah,
But Trump
I'm the
said it
same way.
best.
When people ask me, "Are you pro-Palestine, pro-Israel?" I say I'm anti-war.
Yeah, Trump said it best. I just want them to stop dying. That was in regards to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which I completely agree with. I just want people to stop dying, right? And not only do I want people to stop dying, I want my money to stop going to them. Like I work, so I get taxed. My money goes to
What do
these
you
people.
do?
I tutor. I used to tutor for an organization. Now I private tutor, so I don't really get taxed, but I used to get taxed, right? My money used to go to certain people, and that concerns me because it's my money. I worked for it. Do I want my money to go to people who I completely disagree with, who are fighting things that I totally disagree with? No, right? I don't want my money to go to Israel when they're killing Palestinian civilians, right? You don't want your money going to Israel and killing Palestinian civilians. I do want my money to go to certain places, right, to help other countries, but I don't want them to go to a foreign country which cares not a single thing about us, and they just want to continue their unjust and unethical war. That's basically it. That's what it comes down to.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. And so, do you ever finish the Gak story? Was that it?
Yeah. So me and Alex, we both keep asking these questions like, to what extent can Israel do this? Do you think that Israel have ever committed a crime? Continuously says no. We keep looking it up. We keep showing him things like that, and we were showing him the international treaties, the flotilla thing with Greta Thunberg, how there were international waters, and the Israelis were just intercepting them, which is illegal. You can't do that in international waters, right? You can't just take people away. That's technically kidnapping. And he said, like, since October 7th, the Israelis are forced to get rid of the terrorists. And I gave him the example of Iran, right? We went into Iran and Iraq, I think, right? Iraq and Afghanistan. We went to Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11, right? And I asked him, do you know that no matter how many times we try to get rid of the government in Iraq and Afghanistan, they always continue to terrorize our country. So regardless of whatever we get rid of, always going to be people who hate America. There's always going to be people who hate Israel, who hate the Jews. So you going in there and killing more civilians just enrages them more, right? You're adding fire to the flame. What is it called? You're adding
You're adding flame to the fire.
something like that. You're just expanding the conflict, right?
We're
We went
adding
into
oil to the fire.
something like that. We went into Iran and Iraq, right? And now those people hate us, right? We gave them like a better government, less corrupt, more Western, but those people still hate us, right?
Yeah, and
Objectively,
in a lot of ways, like, the U.S. government is good for the U.S. It isn't good for everywhere. Certain cultures, like, if there was a dictator in certain places, just because of their culture, maybe that would work. I think
exactly.
it's horrible for the U.S. because of our culture, but
More interference equals more hatred because they don't share the same values as us. And we can't force everyone to share the same values, right? Let's focus on things that happen in our own country and try to make our own country better before we move on to other countries, right? We're not a perfect utopia, so why would we try to make other countries a perfect utopia before us? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's where the left and the right bridge their gap. Really, I think that's where they truly bridge their gap, where they realize, like, listen, our country is not great, right? We need to focus on our own issues, right? We need to stop sending aid to certain countries that don't care about us and have no. They much rather us be just purely like a money mule, right? They rather us just give them money. They don't care about our values. They don't care about our country. They would rather see us disappear if that was the best scenario.
Yeah. And like during the Cold War, for example, the argument was like, Russia will spread communism, like, communism will be Soviet Union will spread communism, communism will be spread, will be taken over, right? Any day now will be taken over. Yeah. there's a chance that Russia invades us, Soviet Union invades us, so we should spread our ideology. But now with climate change, we are basically past the point of no return. We can only really minimize the damage that's being done. The temperature is, people talk about like, oh, the end is soon. Any day now, the climate will become irreversible. No, I mean the damage that we've done, it will basically almost probably never go back to pre-industrial revolution levels. We can make things better, but most climate scientists agree it's not going back to pre-industrial levels. Now that being said, why don't we put the same amount of effort into climate change as we do, like, funding Israel and like all these other countries? Because frankly, whether Palestine wins or Israel wins, I don't think anybody wins in the end, really.
At the end of the day, most people don't give a shit. Like, let's be
Yeah,
for real. They
it's
care
not.
about the money in their pocket, and that's the end all be all for most humans. The
Yeah,
money in their
they
pocket
don't.
is what matters.
Yeah, and they don't. Frankly, I think the people that are funding Israel don't actually care. They just want money, and I think that's a big problem with our political system. Like, I really think that people in Congress, you should not be allowed to accept gifts of any kind.
I
Just
think
just
I want everyone, whoever watches this video, look up trackapac.com and just look to see how many of your congressional of your
I'm gonna look this up.
Congress people accept money from Israel. And there's only Israel lobbies. There's only three people who haven't. It's Thomas Massey, AOC, and Ilhan Omar. I don't even know if she's still in Congress, but I know she never accepted a dime from Israel, but she accepted dime from money from other countries. Yeah, Thomas Massey was the only one I think who's never accepted a dime from any foreign entity.
Here, let's see. Let's see who AOC accepted money from. $0 from
Yeah,
APAC. $0.
$0
Good
from
for
APAC.
her. I mean, good for her.
Yeah, and
I mean, I know. I'm sure you disagree with her. Nydia Villas. I'm gonna butcher that name. U.S. Representative, New York, number 7, and New York, number 14, AOC have accepted $0. Good for them. I mean, I know you disagree with them on like most things, but I'm sure that's a pot.
I'd much rather have them than other people. Let's be honest. Yeah. Look. Like, this is our country, so why are you representing the interests of another country? Like, that's the issue with Congress, right? There's two main things that we should change, or three. Number one, no stock trading. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah,
That's
that's so silly to me. Like, what? What are we doing, guys?
How are we letting this slide? Number two, all foreign countries, including APAC, should be registered as a foreign agent. So this actually is very interesting. If you go back to the time of JFK, so the American Zionist Council, that was the original like APAC, right? JFK was very pushing them very hard to register as a foreign agent for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that when you're registered as a foreign agent, any money that you accept or donate has to be audited, right? So right now, APAC is not listed as a foreign agent. It's listed as an American entity, right? American Israeli Political Action Committee or something like that. It's listed as an American company or American interest group. Their finances don't have to be audited. Their money can go anywhere. It can go to South Africa for all we know, right? So their money never has to be audited. And any money that they accept or they donate doesn't have to be audited by anyone. When you're a foreign agent, you're forced to show like your return. It's kind of like a tax return. First to show what I spend my money on, who did I give my money to, which companies got my money, who got my money, which is important, right? We don't want our money to be going through to people we don't know. Like, we don't want our money to go to people we have no idea, right? We don't want our money to be going to a foreign dictator for all we know. Like, we don't know anything about where our money goes, and that's an issue. So JFK was really for pushing the AZC to be registered as a foreign agent. He eventually was also very against the Federal Reserve. He eventually was trying to push Congress they're about to pass legislation, but all of a sudden he dies. He gets assassinated. All right, we can get into that later, whether or not that was inside job. Regardless,
I'm very curious what you have to hear because honestly, I know nothing about it, but I know there's a lot of
great rabbit hole.
I'm very curious what you have to say about that.
So the couple of things that I know about it is that, I mean, you can watch the video for yourself. Basically, where the bullet came from, like, when you get shot, right? Let's say I get shot right here.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go this way, right? The bullet came from here, but his head went forward. and then another bullet came and his head went the other way. So do you think that would be one shooter? In my eyes, right? I personally think we should trust our intuition a lot more than we do now. My eyes are literally seeing something, and you're telling me I'm not seeing it. I think you're full of shit, right?
Well, like maybe the bullet went like this. Or
Hold on a
no.
minute.
I would need to see the footage.
You can honestly watch the footage.
Yeah.
The wounds here. Somehow went this way when it was shot from allegedly here, but went this way too when it was shot from allegedly here, which makes no sense.
Could
Right?
it have gone like through and then it went like this, like it turned?
I don't think that's even possible
Okay.
at all.
I mean,
Honestly,
I have to look more into it, but it sounds like, you know,
you'll
I'm
have to look more
definitely gonna
into it. Yeah,
research it.
just watch the video. Honestly, watch the video, change your life.
Yeah.
It will change your life.
I
So
think I mean, I don't believe in a lot of conspiracies, but one that I do believe is that the FBI killed Martin Luther King.
I agree with that as well.
Because it
100%.
just so happened that he started talking about like wealth redistribution like right before he got assassinated. I think they assassinated him because they were afraid he was going to become a socialist, and then people were going to listen to him.
He was kind of a socialist at the time, but yeah, 100%, 100%. I agree with that. I think a lot of political figures are assassinated and they're controlled by certain people when they start speaking against a certain narrative. What narrative? It's for you to find out. But certain narratives,
I think
you can never go against
people
the grain.
on the left and the right kind of agree. They just disagree. Like, who is it that is, you know, controlling like behind the scenes? And one thing I think we could both agree on is that, you know, I really think it's silly that, like, you know, I'll be like, someone will be like, especially like people who are like really like deep into like conspiracy theories, will say like, oh, there's this elite group of people, you know, controlling the world, trying to destroy civilization. And I'll be like, well, I don't know about destroying civilization, but yeah, there are definitely a group of billionaires through corporate lobbying that definitely affect the legislation that's passed. And they'll be like, no, I mean gay people. And it's like, dude, it's right there.
They ruin it for my side. I don't like that. I think conspiracy theories, it being called a conspiracy theory is a psyop. Like they purposely label that name so that it makes you seem like you're crazy. Conspiracy theories are true, therefore they shouldn't be considered a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Like there's some
Like
conspiracy theories
for a long
subjectively.
time, the Epstein didn't kill himself Wikipedia page said that Epstein didn't kill himself is a conspiracy slogan.
But
But
for real, we all know what really
he
happened.
didn't kill himself. Yeah.
Ridiculous, honestly. A lot of people see things with their own eyes, but they don't believe it because people from authority positions are telling them not to believe it. And I think that's the most ridiculous anti-human thing ever. Like your eyes are telling you something, your eyes are probably right.
I think also this could have to do a little bit with the rise of Google, and and even more so with the rise of ChatGPT. Because before Google existed, like let's say you're in a bar, right? And you're saying like, okay, you're arguing over what is the biggest animal, and I say the blue whale, and you say no, it's like
An elephant.
an elephant. Like you sort of have an argument about it, and you trust your intuition and you trust your mind, and eventually maybe you could come to a conclusion by like talking about it. I wouldn't say there's a stupid argument because I think it's the same process of figuring out like which is a blue whale picture or is a understand all of the historical complexity of this situation, and most people don't have time for that. Most people have a surface level understanding of the issue. Obviously, maybe you don't need a PhD, but you definitely like it's a lot of stuff, and I don't think anybody on the planet truly understands it in all of its complexity. So really the best you could do is from the subset of information you have, figure out, okay, maybe this contradicts this fact, so this contradiction shows that the other, you know, conclusion is true. But with the advent of Google, now you could just Google it. You could just Google what is the biggest animal on Earth, and I think that leads people to stop trusting themselves and trusting their ability to reason.
On top of that, not only is Google is able to be controlled. Things are able to be controlled. And that's an issue, right? Google has been commonly seen to show certain search results over others because of the people who give them money, right? Anything can be controlled. So it's hard to trust that as an objective source when in reality it's not an objective source because it's subject to profit, right? Not only profit, but it's subject to,
Yeah, people manipulating the algorithm. It's like
Correct.
when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And I think that's the difficulty of making a search algorithm is that, you know, like if you're like it's similar with school, right? With grades, right? Grades are supposed to be a measure of, you know, your intellectual progress. But for a lot of people, and I honestly, you know, if people are grades maxing, I don't see an issue with that at all. To each their own. You gotta do what you gotta do, man. I don't swing like that. Like, I mean, my personal opinion is I try to study, but I try to make sure that I'm actually learning the material to the best that I can. Sometimes you can't do that, but like,
That's what I think Roslyn teachers do really well. They tell you, like, don't just memorize. You gotta actually understand what you're
agreed,
memorizing,
agreed.
which I love. Some teachers don't do it
Yeah,
perfectly, like we know who,
yeah,
but a lot of teachers do that, which is good, which I love. Like, thank God I live in
yeah.
this. Like,
And
I'm
it's
able to
sad
go.
because like throughout the country, that's just generally not true. I think teachers are definitely underpaid. Like, why are elementary school teachers not paid? They're shaping the foundation for our society. The youth, like us, and along the people younger than us, we are the future of America. So why are we not paying elementary school teachers more? Why is the government not paying them more?
And why are we not firing bad teachers? Like,
I
why are we
agree,
giving
hundred
tenure to
percent,
bad
hundred
teachers?
percent, 100%. It's completely ridiculous. I agree that the Department of Education is a little bit bloated. I 100% agree. But I think the solution isn't defunding it. I think it's reallocating the funds. Put more into training teachers into good pedagogy.
The issue is in the DOE. I mean, I agree with you. Reallocating funds is probably the best thing to do, but a lot of bureaucratic institutions like that, they don't change unless you literally force them to change, right? You can't just be like, we suggest that you put funds towards
Yeah.
here instead of
You have
here.
to go in there, yeah.
You have to go in there and be like, we're taking your money away. Otherwise, or if you don't do this, that's it. You have to do this. Otherwise,
But
we take
then
your money
but
away.
but I think what Trump's doing from my understanding is he's not saying like reallocate or I'll take your money away. He's just taking the money away because they're not allocating it properly.
Right, but that tells them like, look, we're doing this shit wrong. We better do this shit right.
But
You know what I mean?
do you think Trump is gonna, if they reallocate better, do you think Trump's gonna give them more funding?
I think he completely tore it down. Right? Doesn't it not exist
Does
anymore?
it
Or am I
not?
wrong?
It doesn't. I remember hearing that. No worries.
Alrighty,
Okay, sick.
We left off somewhere. Where did we leave off?
But yeah, grades. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times people, and no judgment to them, but like they maximize for grades. And I think that's more of like don't hate the player, hate the game kind of thing. When grades are supposed to be a measure, they're not supposed to be a target, but the measure has become a target, and now it's no longer a good measure.
Yeah, it's a mix of both. I mean, obviously, you need some kind of like objective measure. Otherwise, everyone's going to be an idiot, in my
Mhm.
opinion. You need
But
some kind of objective measure to force people to learn, right?
I think holistic admissions are really good.
Yeah,
I think
like
they're doing a good job.
this actually relates to capitalism, right? People are not going to do anything if they don't have a profit incentive, right? I'm not going to study if I don't have an incentive to do well of seeing a beautiful 99 in my power school, right? So it's kind of similar to where our Western ideals lie, right? Our Western ideal lies in free market, free enterprise. Why? Because we believe in the profit incentive, right? So I think it's kind of the same thing. You could like kind of make an analogy out of it. So we need some objective measure, right? We need the SAT. Like when we went test optional, a lot of things were not like
Yeah,
the
and
same.
test optional doesn't even make any sense to me because there's so many free resources online to study for the SAT. I think if you really want to make it fair, consider extracurriculars less because if your dad is a member of Congress, you can just like, "Oh, wow, I have an internship at the United Nations now." Like, if you really want to make it fair, put the emphasis on grades, SAT, letters of recommendation, and essays. Extracurriculars should be considered a little bit, obviously, like I think if you don't have good extracurriculars like available to you, that should be considered. If you really care about like poor people. Obviously, if you can afford it, it shouldn't be used against you. It should help, but it shouldn't hurt you if you're not able to
The
afford.
the thing is, I kind of agree with you there because they are considered. I don't know what English class you're in, but in my English class, we read a bunch of like college essays in the beginning of the year, and one of them was about this kid who was extremely poor, and the second he got home from school, he had to go straight to work, just to be a server, right? And in his college admission, I'm like almost like 99% sure, like they consider that, right? And so obviously he has less extracurriculars than anyone else would because of his situation, which is why like I love the supplementals, I love the
Yeah,
personal statement.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's a lot more holistic than it used to be, which is good. I like
Yeah,
that too.
I think that holistic admissions are a good thing. I think the more like people will talk about how like colleges have if you're white you're at a disadvantage. I don't think that's true at least anymore. Maybe it used to be true. I don't know, but at least my understanding is you have to consider like I think hard work should be rewarded, and you have to consider how far it took somebody to get to the starting line. And if your culture, like, and obviously, I'm not racist. Don't cancel me.
I mean, well, I feel like what you're about to say is that, like, your starting point is different based off your race,
Well,
but the
I was
issue is, like, you're generalizing everyone under an umbrella race,
sure.
which is inherently racist.
Sure. I think that maybe if you talk about, like, in your essays, for example, and I think this is what the Supreme Court decision did. If you talk about race in your essays, you talk about like, unfortunately, and you know, this is not being racist. It's me making an astute observation. Don't cancel me. That education is not emphasized as much in Black culture as it is in, say, Chinese culture. So
Or
if you're
Jewish
or
culture.
Jewish
Yeah,
culture, right?
yeah, that's true.
So if you're in an environment where it's like nobody's really encouraging you, you're not really thinking about what should I, pursue higher education? Is that something available to me? I don't know anybody who's pursuing higher education. Then it's kind of like you have to go in a weird path to get there in the first place. And if that's the case, obviously you should write about it because it's not like they're just gonna know. And also, I think it is important on a college of Kansas. Diversity is important. Diversity, if everybody, MIT, for example, could just admit all International Math Olympiad participants, every single one of them, every 1600 SAT person, but they'd have a very boring class. I think part of education is being around people with different worldviews than you, and that
Yeah.
includes conservative people. That includes conservative
Yes, yes,
people.
yes, yes.
I
I
think that
think the first thing, like, first part you said, I was trying to like, you're saying diversity is important, but I agree diversity is important, but not diversity of my skin color or my heritage. It's diversity of perspective and understanding. So, like, I have a perspective of life where I grew up in a certain place with certain people, and someone else grew up in a certain place with certain
I
people,
think
and
skin
that
color.
perspective is important.
I think
And I
I
don't
think
think race plays as much as a role as status or geography.
I think though, in a lot of ways though, race does give you a certain perspective. Not always. Deaf culture, for example, like people can't hear. There's a difference between capital D deaf people and lowercase d deaf people. Capital D deaf people are people who are deaf, and that's part of who they are. That's very much shaped their identity, and they they're part of the deaf world mostly. Lowercase D deaf people are people, maybe they're hard of hearing. Like my mom, for example, she's hard of hearing, and being deaf is really part of her identity, but she's not really part of the deaf community. She's more in the hearing world. She can read lips. She has hearing aids, and so yeah, lowercase. You kind of get the idea. I think that happening. I mean, even in both cases, being deaf is going to my mom's hard of hearing to shape your worldview, and so being Black, for example, is going to shape your worldview because you're going to encounter people who, in Europe, like there aren't many Black people, so you're going to encounter people who have never met people like you. You're going to encounter people with certain perceptions of you. Even me being Jewish, like it has shaped my worldview, albeit probably not in as great ways as if I were Black, because you can't. I mean, unless you're like looking for it, I think I look Jewish, but like unless I'm wearing my Star of David necklace, people aren't going to assume that generally, unless they're very perceptive.
Yeah. But, like, yes, that is true, but it doesn't mean you should take away opportunity from someone else to give it to another person purely based off of something that they can't change.
I agree. I think also the issue is though that it's a zero sum game. Unfortunately, if every person that you let into a college is or actually it's more it's a negative sum game, because like if you're like MIT AdCom, if you're an MIT admissions committee and you admit one person, that's like 100 people you're not admitting. So like unfortunately, yeah, admitting people is going to, no matter what, like not admit other people. It just comes down to like what MIT in their blog, they talk about how they're building a team of people to climb a mountain. And I think that requires having people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of ideas and ideologies, everything having different perspectives, because that is what will shape them as people.
Right, but I don't think they should be purely dividing the difference between a person and another person because of something that they can't change.
100%.
Like, if it was alright, let me give an example. Let's say my twin brother had, I don't know, some kind of palsy, Herb's palsy, one of your, like, you have nerve function that doesn't work. And me and him, we have the same stats, same everything. I don't think, or sorry, let's say I have slightly better stats. Like, let's say I have like a 1570 instead of his 1480. Let's say I have a 97 instead of his 93. And I don't think that my opportunity should be taken away because of something that I can't change. Like, I wasn't born with Herb's palsy. It's not my fault I don't have Herb's palsy. It's not his fault that he has Herb's palsy. So I don't think he should be allowed in because of his disability or his difference. and me having higher stats, maybe you could say he worked harder for his stats because of his disability. But at the same time, it's like, then what's the point of the objective measure if it has subjective interpretation in a
Well, I
sense?
think it does have it isn't an objective measure in a way, because it does have subjective or interpretation. In 7 GPA in Roslyn, which is like a town where everyone could afford tutors, I'm pretty sure Hicksville is a Title I school, is much very different than 107 at Hicksville. You know, GPA weighted. So
What does
like
Title I mean?
it means that a certain percentage of the student body like meets the federal poverty line, I think, or like qualifies for free lunch or something like that. I think actually all lunch is free in New York now, or that might be only New York City.
No, I think it's actually I have no idea honestly. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to comment on that.
I think all lunch is free in New York now. So, but I think it might be poverty line then. Like so, you know, having 107 here is very different than having 107 in Hicksville. I think having 107 in Hicksville, where you're surrounded in Roslyn, where you're surrounded by overachievers and people who are, you know, striving to start their own companies. Like, if you look like Zach Yadagari, you know, this kid,
Incredible guy. Yeah.
yeah. Even though he didn't get into places, which honestly I see why. You know, no hate to him. His essay
Bro,
was
we
not
all
that
know
good.
his essay was trash.
Yeah,
His essay was trash.
but you know, I mean, good for him. He doesn't really need college, like as he said himself.
Yeah, you should watch his YouTube video. It's actually interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Did he admit
Yeah,
that he had a bad essay or like?
bro. I think his ego's too high for that.
Yeah. But it's like we were saying in the beginning. I think that being admitting you're wrong is very difficult, and so I'm not going to judge someone if they can't admit that they're wrong. But I will praise. It's kind of like supererogatory. I will praise somebody if they are able to admit that they are wrong.
Yeah. So like I kind of see what you're saying. But let me give you a hypothetical, right? Me and another kid are from Roslyn. This person is, let's say, Hispanic, right? My stats are better than his. My objective measures are better than his. We're both from Roslyn. We both experienced generally the same upbringing, right? And he gets into a college I don't get into. Let's say, like, in this hypothetical scenario, our essays were of similar caliber, our supplementals were of similar caliber, our extracurriculars were of similar caliber. He gets in over me. Why do you think he got in over me? Do you think that's right that he got in over me?
No, I don't think that it's right that he got in over you. Ideally, that would be due to chance. But if you're, I think what often happens is that people who are like Hispanic, and particularly those who have it as a big part of their identity, often develop a unique perspective and become more introspective and thinking about like inside their brain. And therefore that shines through their writing because you could tell that they're actually like, I'm not talking about you, for example. I think
But
that you're
I feel like that's like a stretch.
I don't in some cases, yes, but in some cases, if this person like people go through trauma, for example, are almost I don't mean to be glorifying trauma again, don't cancel me, guys. People go through trauma are often very, very interesting people. And that's just like my observation. I find this to be true that people go through trauma are very interesting people because they've
Yeah, but
developed a unique perspective. And that can if that shines through their writing, and if a Yale committee says, even though this person has an SAT score that's 50 points lower than our median, their perspective is so invaluable that I think that this person should be in our college. This person must be in our college to enrich our community. Then that's their decision. They're a private institution.
I feel like you kind of stretch the idea like, oh, because he's Hispanic, he generally has more of a different
Well,
introspect.
it's not that he is Hispanic. It's that I said if being Hispanic is a big part of his identity. But people don't make something part of their identity unless it has shaped them.
Yeah, but I feel like everyone has that kind of thing. Everyone goes through a struggle. Anyone in the world, you ask them like, dude, what's really hurting you today? What's hitting you hard in life recently? Everyone's gonna tell you that they have a struggle. No one lives life like perfectly with no struggles. Whether that struggle is valuable, whether you think that struggle is a real struggle to you, it could be real struggle to them. And I think that like I just think it would be unfair.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
lost my
both things
spot.
can be true, though. You know, like on one hand, everybody has struggles, and I think all struggles are valid. But you could also agree that yeah, like some struggles hit harder than others. You know,
Do you think that it's more of a race thing or like a economic class thing? That actually makes a difference.
I think it should be more. I think I don't know if it is a more of a class thing or a race thing. I think it should be more of a class thing
Yeah, that I agree with. I think it is a race, more of a race thing.
because there are black people who are whose families are really well off, and for them, they're not discriminated against as much as like black people are poor. I think most of the discrimination that happens in this country is not racism. I mean, I don't know. I think most of it is classism.
100% agree. 100% agree. Like, I know a kid who's extremely wealthy. His parents are both extremely wealthy, and yet he still victimizes himself because of something that he has. Who are you to victimize yourself and say that you're grouped in with your people who are extremely poor? Like, you have an inherent difference because of your wealth and then their lack of wealth, right? A white person is poor generally has the same experience growing up in a similar community to a black person who's poor, right? Maybe like, let's say, like colleges obviously are not comparing me, who went to Roslyn High School, and then someone who lives in rural Montana, right? Our stats are obviously going to be different. His stats are going to be more impressive because of where he's from. Let's say it's a 1450, it's more impressive than my 1510. Fair enough. But if I grew up in the same community as this kid, we both had this generally the same experience, and the only one difference is race, and they accept him over me. I feel like that's just objectively unfair.
Yeah. I
So,
think
like,
I think that a lot of times, like, I personally I agree, and I think that this Supreme Court decision that, like, what it said was that you can't consider race in college admissions, but if somebody writes about race, right? If somebody writes about it in their college essay and how it has shaped them, that can be considered. So, I think that that is
okay,
a good
fair enough.
middle ground. Yeah, I think we agree on this. And also, like, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think a lot of people. One thing I want to say is a lot of people have more middle ground, more of the things they agree on than they think they do.
For sure. We're very divided. I think yeah.
Yeah, I think we're very divided for something we talked about way earlier about the national identity. We kind of lost that common values, which I think is one of the most important things that shapes a nation, right? That shapes a people. Is we have common values.
I have
If
a
we don't have
question for
common
you.
values, we'll never be agreeant.
If the two, let's say, I know obviously like the last people like who run is gonna be a Democrat and a Republican, right? Let's say for whatever, like, in some hypothetical scenario, you had to vote for either Joe Biden or AOC. Which would you vote for?
Joe Biden and AOC.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, this is something I think about. I think that Joe Biden, I agree. And Joe Biden, like, nobody likes him because it's that he's so moderate, which I think, I do think everything in moderation, but I think he's so moderate that he just stays with the status quo and nobody wants that. Everybody
Moderate is a stretch. I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden because he's fucking 90 years old and
well,
has prostate cancer and
what if
has
it
to
was
go through
between
chemotherapy.
Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden?
Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. I would pick Joe Biden because I think Joe Biden will have a less negative effect on the country than
Really?
Bernie Sanders would.
Do you
Yeah.
think AOC would have a net positive effect on the country?
No, not
No?
at all. No. Not only is it politics, I think her values are inherently against what American values are overall. I think I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden purely because of his incompetence as a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
And
generally incompetent.
I guess what I was gonna say though was I think a lot of conservatives like are more should be in theory more willing to vote for Bernie Sanders or AOC than a Democratic moderate because what we really want is change, right? I think
Uh,
everybody agrees that the status quo right now is not perfect. And it could be the case that having somebody who's very conservative in power ends up being the ultimate thing that changes our country in a good way. And I think it could be someone who's very left. I mean, personally, my prediction is that someone's very left and that, you know, lowering taxes on the middle class and the lower class and keeping the taxes basically or increasing taxes on the like ultra wealthy will that I and giving more benefits, making social mobility easier, investing into small businesses. I think these are policies that will change our country for the good. And
I think everyone agrees on that. I
yeah,
think literally everyone agrees on that, but they don't agree on the execution, right? Like Zohar Mamdani, he wants to like obviously taxes like to an extent. You can't just tax the shit out of someone because they have no incentives to get rich. Then, well, why the hell would I care to innovate? Why would I care to create? Why would I care to
well, you get
compete?
taxed more, but you'll have more.
Right, but to what extent do you want to give up something that you worked hard for people who sometimes don't work hard for at all, right? And to what extent do you want to incentivize actually working hard, right? Because if anyone who's poor is able to live a great life without hard work, without contributions to society, Like, do we really want that? Do we really want people to be incentivized to be lazy?
Well,
It's
I think
obviously it's not just purely like more taxes, less taxes. There's more to it, but we have to balance that, right? It needs to
for
be
sure.
balanced.
For
It
sure.
can't be
But
just like no
but at
taxes
the
for the poor
at the same
and
time though,
all
I
the
don't
rich.
think that I agree that I don't think that people should like you should be able to just do nothing and live an amazing life. At the same time though, I really think that people, should not starve, right? I think that people should have their basic needs met, whether that be through food stamps or whatever. I think we should have their basic needs met, and then if you want to have quality things, right? Like just like an attorney, think of it like that, right? You can get an attorney for free. You can get a state funded. I don't know what it's called, or you can go to a law firm if you're able to afford it. Obviously, if you go to a law firm, right, your attorney's going to be better, and so that is what incentivizes you to have money. I think that because some people are just you have people with disabilities, you have people with that there are so many different types of people, and we don't we in general it may be true that there are people who don't work hard, but I think that in some ways we care about people, right? Like me and you both, I think we both care about people. I think we differ in our execution of it. Like you think that, for example, it should be a personal decision to donate to charity, and I think that people in a lot of ways aren't going to do that, and so we need to rely on the government to give people their basic substantiation so that they survive.
My personal take on that is that it's a deeper issue. If people don't want to donate to charity, I think it's a deeper issue. In my personal opinion, I think it comes down to faith and religion, right? The church always incentivized donation, right? We used to rely on the church in order to help the poor,
Yeah.
but we now rely on the government to help the poor, which I think is just ridiculous. Because when the government has this much power, they use that to get this much power. Give
Yeah.
an inch, take a mile.
Yeah, and
And
but unfortunately, though, how for now, right? I don't think it's possible to, for any government to create a cultural shift, right? That's not a government can't do that. The only thing that can really cause a cultural shift, I guess theoretically our government could now because Donald Trump is somewhat of a celebrity. Donald Trump, I think, could cause a value shift, but I don't think Joe Biden could, just because Donald Trump is, even though he's not popular with everybody, within a certain group of the population, he could create a cultural shift in how we value things. Taylor Swift, likewise, even though not everybody likes Taylor Swift could cause a shift in our values.
I think the thing that causes shift in values is media.
Mhm.
I think it's understanding and knowing. I think that the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues in the world right now is that people take no time to research. They take no time to form a real opinion, a fact based opinion, and they just rely on authority figures to tell them what's true. And we see what happens when authority figure tells you what's true. How do you know that what you're saying is actually true? Who is telling you to say this? Why are you saying this? Where do you get your information from? Where do the people that you get information from get their information from? Right? So people are generally misinformed on both sides, obviously. They're generally misinformed because they're getting their information from a biased source. If we all if we all got our information from, we did all our own research, if people are more educated, and they actually cared about what happens in our country, we would overall be a more productive society. And obviously, not everyone has the time to do their research. But if if you want to contribute to the political sphere of society, I think you should do your research.
Yeah, democracy thrives on an informed citizenry for
Yeah,
sure.
you can't have a complete fucking buffoon who has never experienced any hardship in their entire life, has never done research on anything, and they're just voting because that's what their parents wanted to vote for, right? You can't have like some little buffoon voting for what their parents say.
On
Like,
that on
give me a big
that
one.
side comment on what you were saying, a lot of people just vote for who their parents voted for. I think we should allow everybody to vote, including children, including like starting at like 5 years old.
Well, then that kind of goes against what I was saying because I was saying 5-year-olds can never be informed.
But a lot of adults are like a lot of adults are not capable, like really stupid people, for example, who vote, and we don't allow make it like okay, you need to have like at least like an 80 IQ to be able to vote, right?
We should. We should.
But I mean, the
To
issue with
exclude that minority of people is helpful to society in the sense of progressing.
so like, but then why start at 80? Why not say okay, you need at least 130 IQ to vote?
Well, I don't think it should be 80. I think it should be a little bit higher than that. But It should be along those lines, right?
But do you think that like only like because geniuses, people are like really smart, people really do their research. Like, do you think that people only with a certain IQ should be able to vote? And if so, why stop at 80? Why not say okay, at least 130 IQ people should be able to vote minimum?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing as saying, like, if you think about it, like, for college admissions, right? Why is it 1550 considered, like, the perfect for Ivy League schools? Why is it not 1540? Why is it not 1560? It's generally around that line. Like, you want to have some
But do you
kind of
think that
line.
like only people who are above average, like in like it does I'm not saying that
Not above average. I think they just shouldn't be mentally retarded.
mhm.
Like, what's considered mental retardation? I'm not saying in the term of an offensive way. I'm just
Yeah,
saying, like,
yeah, I
physically
got
retarded.
that.
Like, scientifically, I think below,
Although
like, a
that's not
95
really the
IQ below a 95 IQ, you're considered mentally, like,
no, but that's not
what is it?
true.
85, something like that.
The majority the I mean, you know, you took AP Stat.
I did take AP Stat.
It's a normal distribution with mean at 100 and standard deviation of 15. So 62.5% of the population falls between 85 and 115.
So
So
anything under 85 is
I think it's like below 70. Below
below 7.
70.
Okay, that's a decent line to draw, right? We'll start from that. But let's draw that line there,
I think
right?
the issue is with adding more voting restrictions is that once we start taking away, like just the principle of taking voting rights away from certain people, right? You could say, okay, we shouldn't allow people with IQ under 70 to be able to vote because they're not smart enough and they're not informed enough. And then we say, okay, maybe we need people to take like a test, like a standardized test to be able to vote. Which honestly, those two ideas I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of people, you know, you need to be able to take a test on how the government works. In theory, I think that that would be a great idea. But
Yes,
then
if you make the test as objective as possible, not influenced by any forces,
but then the
which
issue
is
is like
hard.
it's like that's impossible. That is basically impossible.
Impossible? I think it's very difficult. I think that it
Yeah,
would take
sorry.
a
I mean,
lot of compromise.
yeah, it would take a lot of it would sorry, that's a better way of phrasing it. Yeah, it's not impossible. It would take a lot of compromise. And, you know, I just don't think that that's I think that we should be moving in the direction of the solution isn't like don't let certain people vote. It's make voting more accessible, make the information more widely available, make the information encourage people to research, like do what we're doing, have conversations and
Yes,
model those conversations.
yes.
Is a much better solution than you know in early elementary school. Critical thinking should be encouraged. Like I was saying earlier, elementary school teachers should be paid more, and it's like you know Mr.
Yes, I know Mr. Tall.
Um,
Big fan.
yeah, big
Big
fan.
fan.
Yeah, he is so good at not revealing his like. I mean, I know his ideology, but I think he's pretty good at
Yeah,
staying mostly unbiased and just letting people come to
I
their own
like that.
conclusions.
He challenges me on things that he would agree with even,
Yeah,
which is interesting.
yeah, me too. I think that is the mark of a good teacher. Be able to shape your thought process and reveal contradictions in your thinking. That's what we should do. And that's what we should be doing even at the like the K through 5 level, K through 6.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. That's awesome. But I don't want to give voting rights to a 5-year-old. Okay? I want to
Maybe not 5, but let's call it
how do I say
13.
this?
Let's call it 13 along with more education in educating people in
More education, not more voting rights. Like, if you're back to when you were 13 years old, if I remember correctly, you're a full-on
Okay, oh,
okay?
let's not go there.
You
Let's not
don't
go
want
there. Let's not
your
go there.
13-year-old self to vote.
Yo,
You don't want
all
your
right,
13-year-old self to
next
vote.
topic. Okay, you win. Next topic. Look,
You don't want your 13-year-old self to vote.
let's not
I
like
don't want my
let's not
13-year-old self
talk
to
about
vote.
anything I said before the age of 16.
There you go. So now you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't
Okay.
want to give 13-year-olds, 14 or 9-year-olds rights to vote.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I would say that I was pretty good about doing my research even when I was 13. I just like
Biased research, that's what I
yeah,
would say. But yeah,
I'm
we
willing to admit
overall
that.
agree on that.
Okay, cool.
That's great.
This has been a very great episode, Brandon. I think I'm gonna. Do you want to end it here?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the 1 hour 40 mark, so yeah,
Yeah,
we're
this has been the
pretty decent.
longest episode I've done, and I'd say this is probably the best episode thus far. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
I totally agree. We hit on a lot of good topics.